Once we understand the standard consensus for the ethics and the morality of caring for terminally ill patients, we have to face the sad fact that many patients who are terminally ill are not competent to make these judgments for themselves. We have to rely on what's called surrogate decision makers. Somebody else has to make the choice. It could be a doctor, it could be an ethics committee, it could be a court. So in this segment, we're going to look at decisions that are made for incompetent patients. In January of 1983, Nancy Cruzan was driving her automobile late at night on a country road. She lost control of the car, ended up in a ditch, not breathing. By the time the rescue squad got there, she'd suffered massive brain damage, much like Karen Quinlan, but she was stabilized to the point that she was not on a ventilator. She was being fed mechanically artificial nutrition and hydration. The parents had to step in to the surrogate role, and they decided that it was not appropriate to continue the nutrition and hydration. The state of Missouri, where this occurred, disagreed, and the case ended up in court. The question arises then, what is the authority of her parents as surrogate decision makers? There are three separate groups of incompetent patients that require substantially different concepts and principles if decisions are to be made accurately. If there's an advance directive or even an oral statement that clearly indicates what the patient would want, that would be the easiest of the three cases. The family's role is simply to provide what is technically called a substituted judgment. Meaning by that, they make a decision based on what they understand to be Nancy's beliefs and values. If that cannot be done, if, for example, the patient has never been competent, or if the patient has never expressed wishes while competent, then we faced one of two other kinds of cases. In the simpler of those cases, the patient is never competent and there's no family available to even step into the surrogacy role. We're going to have to appoint some stranger to make the decision. That stranger might be the physician, it might be a hospital ethics committee, or it might be a court-appointed guardian ad litem. One good example of a never competent patient was a mentally retarded man named Joseph Sakowitz. He began suffering leukemia, and the question arose as to whether to impose a burdensome regimen of chemotherapy on him. He had no family available to make the choice, so the court had to appoint someone as the decision maker. In that case, the stranger who was appointed as the surrogate had to determine what was most plausibly in the best interests of the patient. That stranger guardian, stranger surrogate, decided to forego the chemotherapy, and most of us believe that was probably the wisest choice. In many of the most complex cases, including the case of Nancy Cruzan, there is a family available to step in and make the judgment. In that case, the family's job is to determine as best they can what is in the best interest of the patient. A similar case arose in Great Britain where a victim of what's called the Hillsborough tragedy, a kind of stampede of soccer fans, left Tony Bland permanently unconscious. And after long litigation, the same decision was made in Great Britain that the parents had the authority to decide to forego life support. In the case of a family surrogate, the family has to make a reasonable choice, but not necessarily the choice that everyone else would make. So families are given a reasonable range of discretion, and as long as they're within reason, we'll go with the family choice, whether it's in favor or opposed to treatment.